This is our April the 2nd, is it? 2nd meeting of the Tucson Hard Science Fiction Writers and Artists Group. And we are meeting at -7 UTI, Greenwich Mean Time. We are proudly presenting Admidan, and he goes by the nickname of Adi Jasarevic today, who is a very prominent Balkan and Southeast European science fiction professional. He's also the curator of the Zenica Bosnia City Museum. He's also an artist, and we will see some of his art. In addition to that, he's a big fan and reader of Ray Bradbury, which thrills me because I am also a big fan and reader of Ray Bradbury. He has so many aspects, it's really hard, and I don't want to attempt to sum up Adi. He's just a, what do we call them, a Renaissance person. And I'm so thrilled that we're crossing many time zones to have people like Adi, and there aren't anybody like Adi, but people from other countries to come and talk to our group. So with that brief introduction, I guess I will go into my little business and technology slides now. So let's see if I can do this the way I normally do. It seems like you have to do things differently when you're in this mode. So I'm trying very hard. I may have to advance by stopping screen share and coming back in, which seems clunky, and there's probably a way around that, but I may have to do this. So this is what I'm doing. And I'm coming in from current slide now, going back into screen share. And going to the second slide and then back screen share. Sorry, this is taking a while, but this is a new thing that I'm doing, and I'm trying to get our housekeeping slides so that we can help people and make it less cumbersome to be in a meeting like this. I will find a better way to do this, but for today, this is the way I have to do it. And see if I can, there, okay, there, we're on the second slide now. I would like to request that people attending the meeting, please turn off your microphones during the talk. Please use chat to post your questions or comments. That should be or. Please turn off your camera to save another typo, save bandwidth if possible during the talk. That's because sometimes it does slow down the voice of the people talking. After this talk, we have the Tucson Hard Science SF channel on YouTube. All of these monthly meetings will be uploaded to that. So it may take a day or two, but you will be able to see this entirety of this talk on YouTube, and then you can share it with your own local groups or whomever. With that, I am going to stop this share. And now we're going to bring up Addie. Do you want to have your slideshow up right away, Addie, or do you want to talk first?
I will talk first. And
okay, all right. So just let me know and we'll, or put it up when you need it.
Really?
One thing, speak very loudly because you were coming in.
Okay.
Very soft. Okay.
Okay. With us in this late afternoon, my friends Mirko and Dragic, they organized the festivals of science fiction and fantasy stories in Montenegro and Croatia, like us in Bosnia. And we will speak about the situation in our countries and informal in last Yugoslavia. At the beginning, I will say something about Ray Bradbury. We will try to organize a festival dedicated to the great American fiction writer on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of his death. This American author is known to the Bosnian audience thanks to books made during the 10th century, as well as thanks to the film Fahrenheit. He is very popular today, and he was very popular in Yugoslavia with the books Illustrated Man and Fahrenheit and Martian Chronicles. We have read Bradbury about 70 years. It's very long period. It's very popular, his show, a theater of Ray Bradbury. As well, we will make an exhibition in Zenica of illustrates inspired with his work, and we'll try to print book of new stories inspired with the stories of Ray Bradbury. Of course, these stories will write artists, new artists from Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro, and Serbia. That's the plan. We have enough time to the end of this year. I will show you some illustrates. Okay. Can you see? Ah, I share.
You have to hit the share button.
It's okay, I share. These are some illustrates, my work. I hope so we will get much more illustrates from other artists from Croatia, Montenegro, and Serbia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. These illustrates are inspired of Ray Bradbury's stories. Mostly illustrates and one short comic. The idea is that this exhibition go in Pazin in Croatia, Bielopolje in Montenegro, and Belgrade in Serbia, and we will promote books in these countries. That's all. That's all. We have good connection with Ray Bradbury art, and something about that could say my colleagues from Croatia and Montenegro. Dragić Rebrenović made a great festival in Montenegro, in Bielopolje. Mirko Grdenić make a festival in Pazin in Croatia, like our festival in Zenica, festival of science fiction and fantasy stories. Is it okay?
Do you have more that you want to tell us, or are you going to open it up now to question and answer, Adi?
It's much better to answer all questions.
Okay.
Julian, možda Nadine nešto.
Može, reci ti.
Oh, would you,
Maybe I can.
oh, would you also like to present? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Greetings for all, for Nadine, for you, Gloria. It's nice opportunity for Montenegro to be with this country and to be again with our friends from Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. As Nadine said, we have a festival in Montenegro. This year in June, it will be a 10th edition of Festival of Fantasy Literature. We have excellent cooperation with the other countries from Southeast European, and we have a lot of books, a lot of stories from that countries, and we have a different topic every year. This year, we're going to promote authors who wrote about traveling in time and also in space, because we want to our writers from region, from Western Balkan, write stories about Jules Verne, about George Martin, about Ray Bradbury. I hope we will help Nadine in his idea to promote Ray Bradbury's work in our countries. I think for the beginning it is okay from us. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I was thinking to ask you if you wish to speak as well. And Andre, is it how do you pronounce your first name? I'm sorry.
His wife.
Oh, that's his wife. Oh, okay.
I rename now for the Zoom. My name is Dragic.
Oh, is that your first name or last?
Yes, first name
First
Dragic.
name, Dragic.
And
Okay.
surname Rabrenovic.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You know, this is so misleading. These can be
It is
named
too long,
after.
yes.
It's often on here, we have people with their husband's account or wife's account, and you're looking at it, especially from another place, you don't always know which is which. So,
Yes, okay.
Dragic, many apologies, not only for not thinking to ask you to speak, but to not getting the name right.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
so I know that you're all very well acquainted and that you're very well acquainted with our science fiction, whereas we here know very little about the history of science fiction anywhere in Europe. We're just, except for maybe H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, and we don't know him by name, but the man who invented the robot in fiction, Chapek, but most people here don't know his name or anything. They just know that the robot came out of some work by somebody. And we really need to be more in touch. I was talking to Adi about, now that we have the capability, we don't seem to be using it in the US. Much of what we talk about.
You think on Karol Čapek, I think.
Karol Čapek, yes.
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 Right.
Yes, we also collect stories about him, about Herbert George Wells, and also Stanislav Lem.
Stanislav Lem, right.
Yes.
We do know about him. That's one
Yes.
that I forgot to mention. He's known
Yes.
here by some, not everyone.
Last year in Belgrade made festival about Karol Čapek.
Oh,
Yes, and main theme was his novel Rule.
R-U-R, Rosum's Universal Robots.
Yes. Last year in Belgrade. In
And
Serbia.
that was also done all over the world at the time it came out. Although it's totally forgotten now, almost totally. We've even had one production of it here in Tucson, Arizona in the 1980s. Someone at the University of Arizona did a whole, stage production. But it was what you call expressionist theater. It was done in the style of German expressionism at the time. And then the next big robot thing was Metropolis. So first you had
Metropolis is good movie.
And then you had Metropolis. So, you know, those two are the big early depictions of robots. But to get into the questions, I'm sure people are thinking about their questions, but I'll fill the void in the meantime. Just speak out if you want to ask a question. I myself am thrilled that technology can be used to connect people. Dragic, do you know the name Fori Ackerman? Have you
Yes,
heard
I
of
do.
Fori Ackerman? You should know Fori Ackerman. I mean, you can, Forrest J. Ackerman.
I know Fori.
F-O-R-R, yeah, Adi can fill you in, but he was the one person in science fiction. There are two directions. One is dividing people and having very militaristic science fiction. The other one is Ray Bradbury, who wanted to bring people together. And I mean, this is a gross oversimplification, but Fori Ackerman, he went by the nickname Fori, not Forrest. He was always involved with going around the world and getting people, even in the Cold War, together. So he went to Japan, he went to, I don't know if China was open and he ever got in there, he may have, but he went all over Europe, East Europe, West Europe, and he made people known in the United States that we never would have heard of. And I'm talking about the 1960s, he was doing this. He went to Prague, he went to Germany, and he met Josef Nesvadba, who was a big Czech science fiction guy. I think he went to Poland and Hungary and Italy. He learned who all the major Italian writers were. In Japan, they loved Fori so much, they gave him a Cadillac car, made him a national treasure. So I think it's important to know, because I see a lot of science fiction that's very negative, very negative. It enjoys war, it promotes war, it does nothing but think of what is the next big weapon system. And that is not the reason I got into reading science fiction. So I think it's important for people to know that there are two different streams of science fiction. There are those who are open to the wonder of the universe. And I think that this new technology is a chance to help that side and not just the militaristic science fiction, which has taken over a lot. And I think it's due to film. Would you agree, Dragic and Adi, that film has promoted a lot of the militaristic kind of science fiction?
Yes, yes. It's
Yes,
very,
of course.
the dynamic for movies, it's good. They like action. Much more.
I don't
action.
call it action, I call it violence. That's
No,
a
yes, action and violence
euphemism.
go together.
Action
Hand
is
to
not
hand.
what you're seeing in many cases, it's mostly violence. Now, we can't eliminate that, but I'm just saying that there are two kinds of science fiction, one that deplores violence. Karl Čapek, for instance, wrote, and so did H.G. Wells, about the atomic bomb before it was developed. I know in H.G. Wells, it was called the, what was it, Bob? I don't know if Bob is with me, but H.G. Wells had, it was not called the absolute at large, that was Čapek. He had a pre-atomic bomb
The
play.
world set free.
The World Set Free, there you go, Bob knows, he's a big H.G. Wells reader. So H.G. Wells deplored these things, he didn't celebrate these things. And he would just create a very detailed picture of what would happen as to the best of his knowledge. And he had some science education. Do you want to say anything about H.G. Wells and his style of science fiction, cautionary against war?
It's old style, old school.
Yeah, well, I think it's very
But it's good.
that
Very good.
we remember we do have the capability with technology to kill everyone on the planet. We need to keep that constantly in our minds. We do have that capability, and we are manufacturing missiles. So, and they could kill every human being and many other species on the planet. So these are not quaint historical writers. These are very timely for right now.
Wells wrote about bad things of technology, about bad side of
Mhm.
technology.
He did, but he also
yes.
wrote about the good side. He had both.
Yeah.
He did. And Karl Čapek, had kind of a mixed view, but I would say he was a little more from the arts and humanities side, always a bit cautious about technology. He
You see,
saw the dangers.
European fiction is different. Fiction writers
Mhm.
write about men, about problems inside the men.
And women, don't forget women.
Oh, of course. Women on the first place. Bosnians like women.
Okay.
Our women are on the first place in our minds and our lives.
Mhm.
Our writers don't like militaristic stories.
Mhm.
Especially we write much more fantasy than science fiction.
Well, I don't think it's fair, though, to say that science fiction carries this germ of weaponry that fantasy doesn't. I mean, fantasy can be every bit as, violent, or have as much what we would call violence porn in it as science fiction. And I also think that these terms, science fiction and fantasy, aren't they giving way to speculative fiction? It's now called speculative. And that includes, they're trying to do away with that border war between science fiction and fantasy, because many people write things that have elements of both. They're part science fiction and they're part fantasy. So they're doing something outside those limited categories.
But today we have no clear genre.
Right. I think that's a good thing.
They're very, very mixed.
Mm-hmm.
You see, on our festivals, in our books, we have no aggressive stories because we have very strong rules when in the commission for the book we find a strange story.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that's censure. But when we find stories which is very aggressive with racism, nationalism, we turn off such kind of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Don't print them. We don't like such kind of stories, and artists. Writing is a noble job, and we must work for good of other people, not to. We don't want to make something bad as popular.
I think it is a fashion here in the United States to have women become as militaristic as men. In other words, you see women at science fiction conventions all dressed up in all kinds of body armor with futuristic weapons, and they can kill any man. And that is growing, I think, over time. Do you think it's because of the increase in our population? There are more people, there's more violence. Why do you see this, that women want to become as weaponized, make their bodies as weaponized as men?
Maybe she's need something for defense from the men.
Well, that's true, but it's a very it's a process of militarization and colonization of our minds with this. I see that as that grows, it's harder to think of women as scientists, and the way that not Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, Susan Calvin, the woman as a scientist. That's boring. That's not action.
We
women
like the stories from Ursula Le Guin. It's much better because then Ursula Le Guin is idol for us, really, and her writing. We like such kind of stories.
Ursula Le Guin, did you
Le
say?
Guin, yes,
Le
Ursula Le Guin.
Yeah, Le Guin.
The best
she's good.
fantasy artist in the world, forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And another person was, I don't know if you know her, Anne McCaffrey.
Anna McCaffrey is good, but not as
She was not as good, but
not
but
as Ursula Le Guin.
she had the unique distinction of being a woman who was trained as an opera singer and
Yeah.
bringing in the humanities, where often the arts are not given much space in science fiction and even other genres. So I think that that's important. What about Dragic? Do you have some feelings about the genres these days, science fiction, fantasy, or what's going on? What's happening?
I think when you speak about A.G. Wells, he starts with some idea, and maybe that is the answer for this question, because when we read about War of the Worlds, we can see some other planets, some other creatures attack Earth and attack humanity. Maybe in that kind of idea, we can find we don't need violence among us, among countries, among continents on the Earth. Maybe that is idea. And now, about a few weeks, I prepared that book for young people in Montenegro, and I show them, because we have now that war in Russia and Ukraine. Because of that, we can find humanity is unite among Martians. And I ask, what now? What some of our politicians, our leaders do if someone from the other planets attack Earth? Maybe in that idea we can find questions why we need violence, because violence is in our atmosphere, violence in the present, violence is in our environment. When we open the newspapers, portals, every day we have some violence in the streets, we have violence in the countries. Maybe that writers from that statement take idea. But Nadine said in our countries, we're going to try to write about some conditions, not only violence, some conditions of our culture, some conditions of mankind, maybe something in the men, also women, but something in the humanity. What we need, what we need to change that violence, because maybe some of the problem maybe we can find in the movies, but also in the video games, because I know the young people play video games with the violence. After that, they're watching movies with the violence, and after that, we have maybe stories and the novels about it. But in our short stories, in our collection of the short stories, we don't have that kind of the violence, like actions like women killing men or the other stories.
Those are very good observations. I appreciate that you mentioned especially video games,
Yeah.
or computer games, because we have a generation gulf too, in that older people read books and many young people never read books. They're just getting all their information through simulation games. And now I understand, is it true?
That's usually,
Yeah, and
in Bosnia too.
and now women have gotten into designing these games, and some of them are trying to, they say it's what I've read, I haven't read a lot on it, is it's a very male dominated culture, the culture of creating video games. And now, at least in the US, women are, maybe in England too, women are starting to design these games. Do you have any knowledge of that happening where you are?
We had problems in our country with the children, and the psychologists, psychologists work with children with problems. Problems because they consume too much computer games, aggressive games. That's everyday problem. The last 20 years in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think in Montenegro and Croatia too, because that we work with children too in the area of science fiction. We have made books not only for adult artists. We work with children, make creative school of creative writing, and they not only learn to write, they publish own stories in our books. Every year we have not only adult book, we have a book, science fiction and fantasy book, which made the children in Montenegro and Bosnia.
Very good.
It's a good work, and this year we work children book. We will publish children book about Bosnia, typical Bosnia motive, Bosnia on stone. That's a Middle Age motive. Of course, they will write fantasy stories. Their vision of our Middle Age on stone. The name of the book is Messages from the Past. But these messages are good for good old people, men and women. We don't like aggressive style, violence in the stories, but you must understand, we don't work something like censure. We try to work on the other way, because we cannot take measures like our old country, like in socialism or in Nazistic countries. Censor is bad. You must have limits, of course, but cannot say to people that they cannot make violent story. You must have other ways to, how can I say, you must make better product without violence as a good as a good example. Cannot work as a judge. You see.
So could I intervene and ask Dragic if he also feels that way?
Yes, yes, of course. I just looking behind me. Where is that book about Latin speaking? Because we have a last 3 years book with pupils from elementary and secondary high school, because that is the stories about ancient people, about queens, about kings, about some stories with together history, some stories about together life, about together culture on the Western Balkan territory, because we want to promote we can live together.
I also have some stories that I know from opera, and there's a Czech opera called Ruzalka about a mermaid. But the Czechs are doing some very revisionist things with that mermaid. She's normally very blonde and very beautiful and thin, but they are doing, changing it so that she might be more chubby. She might be a little fat, maybe not fat, but she might not be so blonde. Are you working on stereotypes at all with the
Yes,
children?
of course. Yes, of course. We crush the stereotypes. Stereotypes are very bad for literacy. Anyway, yeah. Stereotypes are for marketing, not for literacy. We know very well what are stereotypes because in Western Balkans, politicians using stereotype every day, and we and some artists too,
Mhm.
but we don't like it and work every day against such kind of writing.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear
but,
that.
I say again, not as a judges, we try to make example
Mhm.
for others. It's very bad to take position of judge, create censor. It isn't good for literacy too.
I was thinking
but,
more, oh, I'm
we
sorry. I
have
was,
success. We have success. Some of these people have great prizes, literacy prizes,
Mhm.
regional in own countries, and European prizes like Drag Shabrenovic, which got European prize for his first book on Eurocon. As you can see, we have success.
Adi, could
Oh.
I ask you a question? I'm interrupting, but could you
Okay.
type in chat when you say a name of someone that we may not know, type it in the chat window.
Oh,
They will never figure it out from trying to hear it. So they can look it up with
Chat.
Google if you type it in.
it's chat.
You know, see the little bubble at the bottom on your toolbar that says chat? You click
I
on
see,
that.
but
You click
but
on
I-
chat,
I have no
and then it
answer.
opens a window
Oh.
where,
Wait a
I
minute.
will try.
or if you can do that,
Um,
yeah, one of you.
Ne otvaram se.
I
So
can.
can you,
I can't open.
you can't open the chat window by
I
clicking on that? Huh, that's interesting. Maybe
Yeah,
I should get
problem.
us out of share screen. Well, I guess we're out of share screen.
Ništa.
Oh, somebody already typed in chat, hold on.
Yes, I do it.
Oh, you did, okay, so maybe when one of you says something, it seems like you're able to do the typing in. I did not advocate for judging,
Right.
Adi. I was not ever saying I wanted people to judge or censor. That isn't what I meant. So if you'll let me rephrase and be more clear, what I was thinking of was when you see students who find the best solution, not in talking or mediating, but in violent actions all the time. And many of our youth here in US are like that as well. To offer them the ideas of what if your character Joe had handled this a different way, you know, or just open it up. What do you think would have happened if he had done instead of A, B, or give them some alternatives? Maybe it's in order because in rhetoric, we think if you can just slow people down, you don't stop them from saying what they want to say, but they haven't had time to think about it. And often when our emotions are very aroused, you're in a very emotional state, we do things very quickly. And even that could even be addressed in the stories. What if Joe had taken 3 more seconds to think about maybe that person trying to talk to him wasn't calling him a name or saying he was going to kill him. Maybe that alien that he was talking to was saying, wait, we didn't mean to, we're off course. We didn't mean to get into your space. So there are things like that where just offering the option of taking more time or thinking of another alternative behavior that's not judging, that's just opening up questions. So do you agree with that as an option for working with young people?
Well, I don't agree that, for example, Alien is bad movie. I don't think that.
No, I wasn't referring to the movie. I was
Yeah,
referring.
yeah, I know, but it's it's good. For example,
Mhm.
why? Because all the movies, movie about our xenophobia, really, about own fairs. You see, you could you can using violence to tell the different story. Story about good things, because that I don't like judges.
I'm not judging, I'm saying options. People sometimes don't even know of a different option than violence because what children get all
But
day long in video games.
you can make options, right?
Yeah.
Literacy.
So, you know, if you
Give
say that children
examples.
are, excuse me, could I finish my sentence?
Okay.
Children are imbibing video games all day long that are modeling violence. So what I'm saying is that that isn't a neutral space that they're living in. It's not neutral. They're taking in a lot of violence. And
Parents are guilty.
it's just not balanced. It's not balanced with other ways of solving problems.
But parents and society must give balance.
Yeah.
You see, my children have not such kind of games. Why? Because I didn't want to give my daughters occasion or learn about the world through the violent games. Parents are guilty, really. You have choice. Everybody have choice. Nobody tell you you must take violent game. Nobody must. Everybody have a choice. But people like us, what can we do? We can make choice. Make other ways. Different books, different games, different stories. Any stories.
That's what I mean. So we're doing the same things here. We're just
Yeah.
trying to offer other things. What is it they say when you have an addiction? I think there is an addiction to violence in children. And when you try to undo an addiction, you have to have something to replace it that's equally pleasurable. You can't just say, no, you can't have a toy gun. But you have to have something that will appeal to the child as much as whatever the other.
What do you think about toy gun toy? Yeah? Everybody buy for the boy as a toy gun, plastic gun.
Well,
It's,
certainly.
it's
I
the
don't-
first step. It's the first step. Second is the violence game.
Right.
Everybody do it in all the world. For the boy, gun. For the girl, little baby. What do you think about it? Stereotypes? Yeah.
Those are stereotypes, and we
Yeah.
are working very hard in the United States to offer alternatives. And
Yeah, we
many-
do it. We do the same job in Bosnia and Montenegro and Croatia too. We don't like it really, but it's very fragile boundary from good work like our work which try to present something different from violence and from work of censors.
I think that a third way is getting children involved in hands-on science and math. Because
Science
Bruce,
could be good and bad
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Bruce Bailey, who's here, one of our people who's attending. I don't know if he's right here at the moment. Bruce, are you here? Maybe he's not, he's here, but he's maybe not right here. Bruce goes out into the community. We used to have what he called the physics bus. And they went out and they would do live experiments, go out to neighborhoods, go to less, schools in the poorer, lower income neighborhoods and help children to see, oh, this is how you do this and that. And it's like magic, like a man who's bringing a magic show, but it's science. And, thinking that science is boring and that only these
science is magic too.
A third kind of an interest. And many children here also, because Arizona is so clear, the air is very clear. You can see. There's a big astronomy club, and some of these, most of them are men, but some women are involved too, take their telescopes to poor schools where people who make less money live and bring their telescopes so that these people can help to see that maybe, wow, I've never seen Jupiter or Saturn. Look at that. And that's as exciting as some of these things that you can buy, the toy guns, it can be as exciting. If people are excited about it who present it, and they do it with a lot of hands-on reality experiments, then the young people, even children in grade school, 10, 11, even 8-year-olds, can become very excited about astronomy, going out and learning about animals out in the desert here. So those kinds of things can be, or building things out of various materials. They had in our university, they have an egg drop. Have you ever heard of this experiment, an egg drop? It's a science experiment where they have to go up to the 6th floor of one of the science buildings and package an egg so that it can hit the ground and not break. You have to figure out, they have a variety of materials there. And the winner is the one who gets the egg to actually go 6 floors down with just paper and other kinds of materials, and it doesn't break. That can be exciting, and they win a prize too.
Maybe we can mention because a lot of time we kako se kaže, opredeljujemo, kao posvećujemo. Dedicate for the young people, like in Montenegro, like in Bosnia, and we organize some workshops about creative writings, about paintings, about arts. With that, we try to give them space, give them a more creativity for science, for art. We want to promote that with children, because they have, I think my son now, my 2 sons now play certain games with the killing people, I think.
Oh, yes.
Moment. But in the morning I gave them the books about Jules Verne, about Harry Potter, maybe, I don't know. Every day we need to promote that value at the children. Because of it, every year we organize some workshops, some exhibitions, some for the kids.
That's wonderful. That's what I was in. I was in this community advisory board where we talked about all these experiments, and they have a Tucson book festival where people come and talk about creativity. And again, I think it's going back to children take in much more than they put out anymore. They're constant, like a waterfall of sensations coming to them where they have to do nothing. They don't have to do anything. It's just pouring into them, video and sound and music and violence. And they sit there like a lump. They don't do a thing. They're sitting there passive. How do we get them back into being active?
Oh, it's brave new world. Brave new world.
Yeah. Well,
Really.
yeah, it's been around for a while. So, but even the elite in Brave New World, who were the ones who were in control of everything, now their children are also becoming passive. where
I
Brave New
think-
World had the different,
I think Ray Bradbury have answer for
we'll
this.
have to get our Ouija board and channel him.
Answer is in Fahrenheit.
That's true.
Uh,
Well,
Society burned all books, but people learn the books and speak every day, and books survive. Ray Bradbury knows answer.
I think
And
that
that's a
was,
good example for
Yeah.
our story. And
I agree. I agree. And I think the others also do. Everybody here, I think, has read Bradbury's stories. But one thing that Bradbury did was he took things that he read and then he actively used them. So it seems Bradbury, almost more than any writer, learned how to use everything that he took in and put it out as a production coming from him. And there's just various ways. Different children differ. Some don't like to be in the outdoors. That isn't their thing. Others like to. So maybe you have to find different solutions for these kids. Do you have any other ideas about your exhibit that you're going to put together? Anything else you want to share with us about that and when it's coming up?
it's better.
Oh,
Like,
okay,
you
so you
know.
missed some of what I asked. I was asking, again, when is this exhibit going to be on Ray Bradbury? What month?
I'm not sure. I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
sure. I'm not sure. We plan to make exhibition in autumn, and we can do it without money. That is a problem. But for the book and printing, publishing the stories, we must have money, and I make a little project for this and try to find money.
Are you going to do GoFundMe?
I make a project for American Embassy in US in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They usually help such
Good.
kind of projects, but they didn't answer. I hope so that they will answer soon. We can make exhibition without help, and we will do it. But for the book, I'm not sure. We must wait. Our friends in Montenegro, Croatia, and Serbia will take our exhibition and present in their countries. And I'm sure during this year, about 10 great towns on Balkan will see what modern illustrator think about Ray Bradbury.
And you know some of the videos that are out on Ray Bradbury, you could incorporate them.
You want to see a short video with my illustrates?
I think there's some on YouTube, some biographical interviews and biographies of Ray Bradbury.
Yeah. We will use it.
Yeah.
We will use it. Yes, of course. We have a good equipment in museum, and could use and can use for presentation of movies, pictures, everything. It's
I
very
will
good.
be sure. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. I do apologize for that. But as I get ideas, I'm so old, if I don't say it, I'll forget it. When you're old, you don't cut. But I'm in touch with Sandy Petrosius at the Ray Bradbury Experience Museum in his hometown of Waukegan. And Sandy is always looking for ways to, broaden the scope of the museum. So I think that it will be good. I will share this video with her. I'll make sure that she knows we have recorded this session. And so she will hear some of your plans that you're doing in Bosnia. And maybe I'll even call her to give her a heads up that she ought to take the time to listen to what you have to say about what you're trying to do here. And then maybe that little, oh, for Dragic, I don't know if Mr. Rabrenovich.
Yes.
I don't know if, do you know about the Ray Bradbury Museum?
Yes, I speak about it with Nadine, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, because with our friends, I have a book from Belgrade.
Mhm.
We work collection stories about Bradbury, and
Mhm.
this in this book is Nadine story also about topics from Bradbury's stories, novels, and something like that.
Oh, there he is. Look at that. On the back. There's the old man himself.
And about 2 or 3 years ago, we tried to have collection stories, the best stories, like anthology of authors from Balkans about Bradbury stories, and try to translate it on English.
That's wonderful. And you know, I wish that we weren't in a place in this country where translated stories are not valued at the present time. I don't know if you know this, but American science fiction and fantasy people are trying to promote their own products, their own writing, and it just seems like the interest has dropped tremendously in anything translated. That's why our book that Adi and I were involved in book project, we couldn't find a publisher. But I will be happy to the best of my ability to forward the news of any stories like about Ray Bradbury coming from the Balkans and let Sandy know, or we'll keep in touch and try to promote the international interest in Ray Bradbury. He is one of the most humane and inclusive writers. He wasn't always trying to put someone down in his writing, and that's what we value about him. So anyway, yeah, I'll be sure that Sandy knows about our session today. And have you talked to Sandy directly, the director?
Not only.
Well, either one of you, but
No, I'm Dragic, not. I connect her on Gmail, and that's all.
Dragic, could you type in your email, please, in the chat window? Because I can forward your email to Sandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find chat too.
Okay.
Finally opened. Wow, nije htio da se otvori.
Well, we're making great progress here in technology.
Ah,
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Yes.
Festicon.
Yes, like our festival.
Refesticon at Gmail. So are you the main organizer of Refesticon?
Yes.
That must be a lot of work.
I'm main organizer, but mastermind is Nadine.
Oh, okay. So you work together as a team.
Yes, of course.
Well, I'm glad to hear all this cooperation.
Nadine is president of the jury for the short story collection. And every year we have stories from that countries like Croatia, Bosnia, Slovenia. But last 3 years, we have stories from Germany, from Romania, from Italy. We translate it on our languages, from Albania, Macedonia, something like that.
You're increasing your range then, sounds like.
Yes.
That's very good work. So,
Dragic work very good.
so hopefully then we can get Sandy aware of all this, the woman who's actually at the Ray Bradbury Museum, and take it out of a regional US focus. She's trying to do that and, you know, make use of this marvelous technology now that you can be in touch with other places. If you could see, have you seen a picture of that museum, the Ray Bradbury Museum?
Yeah, I saw.
It's just a little storefront, you know, it's a storefront, but she's done amazing. And I think she told me that she has background in the Balkans in her family too. She has some Balkan ancestry. But
her museum look like something, some stories from the Ray Bradbury stories.
yeah,
Very similar.
yeah. So she's starting from a small town focus, and Waukegan is a small, just to characterize it for you, a small industrial town that's about 25 miles north of downtown Chicago. So it could be considered a far north suburb with industry of Chicago. And it's been a heroic effort that she's put in to try to draw various people, filmmakers, and this one and that one. But yet it remains, what really surprised me is very few science fiction fans in the US know about it. They don't know about it. So we still have regional, provincial attitudes here. The people in some of the different parts of the US, New York fandom may not know what's going on in California fandom or whatever. And I think, again, we need to coordinate more, since we're supposed to be the ones who are dealing with scientific and technological change in part of our field, the science end. Sometimes we don't make enough use of it. But I think this is a big step forward. Having Zoom is something that I didn't in my life think I would ever see. And I'm going to try to get I had 30 writers from about 12 or 15 countries involved in that project, the old project to have Planet Europa SF. And I will try to get some of them to appear on Zoom too, from their various countries. So that's something hopeful to look for in the future, as well as your wonderful endeavor to connect everybody. You know, Ray Bradbury was a great connector. He wasn't a divider, he was a connector.
Yes, it is. This is a Yugoslav edition of
Oh, look at that.
Illustrated Man.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
old book.
So that's how you spell his name. Oh, very
Yes.
phonetic.
Yes.
Phonetic.
Yes, Serbian edition, they spell full names. And really, that's mean, it's translated as a tattoo man.
Tattoo man. Okay.
Tattoo man, not illustrated man, the tattoo man. That's
I like your drawing better, the one that you made. Your drawing is
I like tattoo woman.
yeah.
Much
Right.
better.
So does anyone else have a question at this point? I've been questioning most of the questions and want to know if any of the others of you who are still with us have a question.
I have a few comments that I've been writing up, so I'd like to just mention them. Okay, one is this book that I just read that wasn't science fiction, but it won the Pulitzer Prize, I think, in 2014. It was All the Light We Cannot See, and it was about World War II. And it's all the terrors of, that are going on in World War II. And at the very end of it, there's like an epilogue that's in 2014, and it's with the granddaughter of the grandson rather of one of the characters using one of those video games, with violence. And it was like, haven't we learned anything? So that was really interesting. The other thing I wanted to mention is that one of the groups that I'm part of is the Tucson Amateur Astronomy Association. And we were in the book fair, and we're going to have an astronomy festival coming up. But in the book fair, we had a lot of activities. We do hand-on activities with the kids, and a lot of them were very scientific. But one of them was, what do you think an extraterrestrial will look like? And we had a lot of coloring, pom-poms and magic markers and sequins and all kinds of silly stuff like that. And a lot of girls did it, actually. but it was very interesting because it makes you think of extraterrestrials not as these monsters, you know, but as as something that was sort of quaint. And I thought it was a good way of talking to people about you know, about nonviolent ways of meeting people who don't look like you. I mean, it really could extend to Earth as well. And then the last thing that I thought of was that there's a popular a popular show here in what is it? I'm not sure what it's called. Popular show in America, where one of the big things that they say in it is be curious, not judgmental. You guys will know who it is. I can't think of the name. And that's a good way of looking at life. Be curious, not judgmental.
Right.
That's what I had to say. I'll mute myself.
Don't have to.
It's okay.
Nancy, Fincy, are you still with us? Nancy, hello, Nancy. Maybe she's not right at her. Hello, Nancy, are you there? Bruce, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
He's
It's been
here.
really interesting listening, but I don't have any questions. It's
Okay.
nice to see things opening up more in
Yes.
goodwill.
That's right.
Is
Well,
what you're all looking for more of.
Nancy, could you look up Forrest J. Ackerman? I'll type it in, and because he's one who did the same kind of work in the 1960s. He was known as the world's goodwill ambassador of science fiction. He used to publish Famous Monsters of Filmland, and he went all over Europe and Latin America too, I think, and Japan, and tried to get people to see, you know, that science fiction can bring people together. It's not just blasters, you know, blasting at each other. They gave him an award, the Big Heart Award. It was a special Hugo Award, I think was given to him for his life's work trying to use. He even was so fervent about world peace, Forey was big into world peace, that he wanted everyone to learn Esperanto, although that language has its own biases, which I don't think, he wasn't a trained linguist. I don't think he realized it favored your Indo-European languages.
Well,
And-
they have a lot of information available about him.
Yep,
Movies he was involved in, books,
right.
and people who will also search for, okay.
Maybe I could give a talk on him because our family were friends with Forey. He was like Uncle Forey, but we were thousands of people had relationships with him. We actually went and stayed at his house once, and he believed these things. He wasn't just putting this on. He really did believe that science fiction could be a force to bring, you know, not force may not be the right persuader.
The force.
Yeah,
Well,
good force.
in science fiction, you can often imagine, for good or ill,
Mhm.
what things can happen without having to actually live through them to see the results.
Oh, that's right. And Forey used to edit Famous Monsters of Famous Monsters it's a magazine. And he would say that about monsters, that children, especially teenagers, would go to these horror movies in order to see what limits are, what's okay, what's human, and to be with things that are so threatening or different, but it's a protected environment. They aren't really having to meet the monsters. They're just experiencing limits. You know, I guess what I'm saying is boundaries, limits, and understanding difference. So that was his argument, because unlike today where we're all against video games, Forey had people who were against comic books and they were against monster and science fiction movies. They thought this was going to ruin the children's brains going to horror films. And so he was making that, you know, it was the same kind of fear in the parent generation, that they were going to lose their minds, these little children, to these terrible new technologies of monster movies and science fiction, terrible aliens, and reading comic books, which were actually considered a major threat to the United States, comic books. There was one one psychologist or psychiatrist who made a fortune going around and lecturing against comic books. He hated them. And he called them Seduction. I think the title of his book was Seduction of the Innocent. You can look it up. I don't remember his name, but I think if you look that up, you'll find his name. So he's someone who, then you can make a parallel between then and now. That's what's useful with a historical forerunner, someone who had the same arguments rhetorically against comic books and against horror films that now are being used against video games. And that, I think, well, I don't want to go on at length, my field being rhetoric. I can go into a whole song and dance about that, but I won't do it. worth reading that book, Seduction of the Innocent, or at least seeing who he was and reading about him online. Wertheim, I think that was his name. And that comes back to me now. And he was furious. He would go around and frighten parents all over the country about comic books. They're going to turn your children's mind to mush.
I don't know of any form of knowledge that ever turns your mind to much. The more you learn, the more you understand, the more you can discriminate.
That's true.
And turning people's minds off of subjects just means
Right.
you don't have the knowledge to judge.
And that's what Forrest Ackerman said, Forrest J. Ackerman. He was saying the same things, only he wasn't a psychiatrist. He published in his Famous Monsters of Filmland, that's the title, what was good about monsters and how they help children to imagine things and simulate things that would be dangerous, but where it's not dangerous because they're doing it in this protected environment. And he also felt that monsters, such as his big hero was Lon Chaney Sr. in the silent era, you know, who played the Phantom of the Opera and the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And he said that that kind of a character, monster, like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, helps us to understand people that look differently and are not beautiful by our standards. Forey also said some people are the most beautiful people when you look at them, but they're monsters inside. And so he had a very sophisticated argument about what monsters were useful for. They weren't just terrible things. They could help people to be more understanding or empathetic. But anyway, Forey was a big influence. He was a mentor on my generation and Isaac Asimov, two people like that.
It's a good point.
So you
It's
like
really good point. All fairy tales are horror stories.
Mhm.
And Ackerman got, as I know, 3 great American prizes for horror,
Mhm.
but with such kind of point.
Well, he had the world's biggest collection of science fiction props at one point, but as he got older, you know, as people get older and they're collectors, he couldn't get any museum to take it because they wouldn't take it under his conditions. He said, you can't get rid of anything. You can't give it, if you take it, you have to keep every single item, and no museum would take it. So he ended up having to auction a lot of it off for partially financial reasons, but a lot of it went to Berlin, to some big poster museum in Berlin, Germany, because they had the money and they wanted some of these old 1930s film posters that were priceless. I mean, they were worth millions, but we could have had them here in the US, but because of all this, you know, the people who are collectors don't know this, that many of them don't know that a museum won't take it on your terms. You have to, if you give it to a well, you're a museum curator, right? You wouldn't take someone's collection and then just, they would dictate and say, you can't get rid of any of this.
My grandfather left a collection of posters to the Pittsburgh Museum, but I think it was without any constraint, so they could do what they wanted with it.
Right. So poor Forey. I loved his collection. When we went to his house, we saw that collection all together before it got broken up. And it would have been
It's very hard for small museums to take such kind of collections.
right if they
It's very-
make that
very-
condition.
Specialized museum like Museum of Ray Bradbury could can take such kind of collections. Others not. Maybe new institution,
Right,
especially for Acronym.
yeah. Well, I'm glad I got Ackerman.
It may be solution.
All right, so we're kind of winding down. I see some people are having to buzz off, so I want to thank both of you, and I will follow up with Sandy at the Ray Bradbury Experience Museum, and I hope that more continued discussions and fruitful collaborations could come out of this, and you people are doing wonderful work over there, and I think we are meeting in ways that wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago. So that's something good, right? On an upbeat
Thank you
note.
so much.
Yeah, thank you all. And I'm gonna sign off here and everybody, and you have a good rest of today. Have to turn off
Thank you,
Sure.
Diane. Thank you very much.
recording.
See you.
See ya. See you later, alligator.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
see you later, alligator too.
A while, crocodile.
To bi bilo to. Live long and prosper.